Good morning, and thank you for joining us today for this webcast on the 4 top takeaways from a successful founder-owned financing. And this is of particular interest to many these days in a climate of higher interest rates. Can I still get a financing done? An unpredictable economy with the continuous talk of this recession that keeps coming that hasn't yet arrived, and then many business owners fearing slowing growth. So how do I, or how does one or a business get financing during this time? I'd like to welcome Pete Kanoy. And Pete Kanoy is not only a friend, but he has helped many of our clients at CEO Coaching International get financing that is, frankly, many founders think is really hard to get. And Pete is the founder of ECS Debt Advisory, and his firm has helped dozens of founders annually get liquidity for their own needs or for acquisitions of companies they'd like to buy. And it's even more interesting now in a time where founders have an opportunity to buy companies that might be struggling and can buy them at a discount. So having some deep pockets at this time makes a lot of sense. And Pete, as I turn this over to you, I have some questions in mind. Who is ECS? Who is the ideal company or founder that you are able to help? Because I'm sure there's some you can and some that you can't. How does it work? How long does it take to get this done? How painful is it for the founder? What role do you play? And I'd love to hear some examples. And with that, Pete, I'd love to turn it over to you. Thank you again for being here.
Well, Mark, good morning, and it's good to be with you. That was actually a couple questions. I'll try to take them for you. So good morning, I'm Pete Kanoy, founder of ECS Debt Advisory. We are a firm, we execute financings for private equity firms. So private equity firms engage ECS to execute the financings for their middle market companies. We also have been working with CEO Coaching since 2019, and we execute financings for some of their clients as well. So we work with some founder-owned companies. The area where we execute financings, Mark, is for middle market companies that make between $8 and $50 million a year. So these are middle market companies that borrow at least $25 million. That's kind of our area. And if you think about a sweet spot, our typical financing has $70 million of debt on $17 million of EBITDA. So your other question was, how does it work?
So look, what you just said, you set some gates here. Minimum 8 million in EBITDA and higher is what you said. So if somebody's at $3 or $4 million EBITDA, not likely your client. I think that's what I heard. And tell us tell me if I got that wrong, and then tell us how it works. How does one do this? And you also said you do this for private equity firms. Well, what if the client is not private equity backed?
Sure. Yeah, and so Mark, the financing market for middle market companies really starts around companies that earn about $3 million of EBITDA. That's really where it begins. Okay. So for your clients in particular, we actually do help them once they make about $3 million. We don't necessarily take all those financings on, but we certainly help them and get them connected to lenders who can assist their situations. 90% of what we do is serve private equity backed middle market companies. So let's use you for an example. You know, you by yourself, you're a founder-owned business. If you actually then do a deal with a private equity firm to become private equity backed, that second situation, that's 90% of what my company does, where the private equity company hires us. I think an important distinction to understand is that lenders are incredibly biased against founders. It's kind of unfair, but lenders do not prefer to lend money to founder-owned companies. They prefer to lend money to your company once you become private equity backed. And so it's ironic, but private equity firms.
So wait a minute here, Pete. You said that most of your clients are private equity firms providing financing to founders. What if you're not private equity backed, and because a lot of private equity firms, and this is what our clients tell us all the time, we see this, private equity firm comes in, wants to slap a whole bunch of debt on our business. So now they own a chunk of our business, and they want to put a bunch of debt on the business, and then we're going, well, why is that a good deal for me? Do we have to be private equity backed for you to come in and do a financing?
No, you don't. And just to clear up a little bit of nuance. So the private equity firms, for example, if a private equity firm owned 55% of CEO coaching, that private equity firm would engage us or another specialist, and sometimes they have a specialist in-house who would then go ahead and execute your financing. So they're not doing the financing, they're getting financing for a company that they back, they have a majority ownership for. So that's one. The point is they outsource it. I think that's the important piece. Two, you can get financing as a founder-owned company, but you have to understand, let's set up basically founder-owned versus private equity backed. So here's the disadvantages for founders versus being private equity backed. Lenders perceive that founders are a much less attractive return on time than that same company once they become private equity backed. That's number one. And just in terms of once companies become private equity backed, the idea is they respond quicker, they've got their ducks in a row, they have better information. So ultimately what founders can do is get their ducks in a row, have great information, respond quickly, that sort of thing. The second thing is once a company becomes private equity backed, the perception is that there's a deep pocketed owner willing to support the company versus the founder. And as a result, lenders basically provide more leverage at less pricing to your company if you're private equity backed, or if they were to lend you money, they would expect to get much better rate and provide you less leverage. And so I'll circle back to your question. You can get financing as a founder-owned company, but the way to do it is you have to go through a specialist. You go through a specialist that has relationships with these lenders, preferably someone who actually does business with these lenders through private equity clients. Does that answer?
Yeah, so how about an example? A lot of founders are contemplating, hey, do I sell part of my business to private equity? They do that because they want maybe some personal liquidity. Most founders want a little bit of that. And secondly, they might want the capital for, hey, some dry powder for acquisitions of companies they like to buy. So if you're not private equity backed and don't want to go down that road, you don't want to give up a piece of your business to private equity, but you still want the financing. Tell us about how that works.
Yeah, it's a super question, Mark, and it's actually a great move for founders to do. So let's say, you have a client, they have a nice company, they've been around for a bunch of years. Let's say they make 10 million bucks a year. And let's say a private equity's knocking on their door and saying, you've got a company, we all think it's worth 100 million bucks, 10 times your 10 million bucks of EBITDA. And they're all telling them why they should sell majority control to the private equity firm. But your client, your founder says, I'm not ready to sell yet. What your founder can do, which is a great checkmate move, is evaluate a financing. And by doing this, a couple things happen. One is by doing that, it'll kind of force you to get your ducks in a row. It's kind of a dress rehearsal, if you would. Basically, you go out and you evaluate a financing. And doing that, you'll make sure you got all your ducks in a row. And what you probably would find out is that instead of actually having to sell control or a big minority stake to a private equity firm and have a new partner, a new board member, and all those things, you could actually, if you do it well, do a financing and get liquidity for your business. For like that example I just gave you. Let's say you and I own that company. We got 10 of EBITDA, it's worth 100 million bucks. You and I could go out and get a financing and go borrow 30, 35 million bucks, put that in our pockets. Now we've diversified, we've got some liquidity. If we do it right, we'd give up 0% equity of our business. We wouldn't have any personal guarantees. And we could, if we did it well, we'd actually do it with the same lenders that the private equity guys, if they bought our company, would take us to. So by the time we'd actually turn around and finally decide in a couple of years to have discussions with private equity, we could start off by saying, look, before we get started, we want to let you know we're already liquid. We've already got more money than we can spend, and we're actually already banked by the very same people you take us to. And we're very excited to start talking to you today.
Okay,
And so
so you said, this is really interesting. You said if you got $10 million in EBITDA, you can borrow, you said 30 to 35, or said differently, 3 to 3.5 times what the EBITDA is. So that sounds like a lot, probably very attractive to some founders. Is that for real that a founder could borrow that much of their business, not give up any of the equity? And what's the catch, or what's the interest rate on something like that? A founder would say that feels too good to be true.
well, I'll give you a real example. So yes, you can do it. And here's the parameters on it, right? So in this, we'll do a little bit of math here. But the parameters are, in this example, this was a $10 million EBITDA company. We assume it's worth 10 times, right? So if you hired a reasonably talented banker, it would trade for 100 million bucks. So that was 3 to 3.5 turns leverage on a loan to value basis, Mark. That's 30 to 35%. Okay. So that would be actionable in that situation. I'll give you a real life example. For a CEO CI client a while back, we did a financing just like this, and they got 3 turns. And they made 20 million bucks a year. So they borrowed $60 million.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The interest rate on that was LIBOR plus 6.5%. This is a couple of years ago. And here's the trick on this, the catch, if you would. The lenders who lend to founders, because they view them being isolated, try to get a pound of flesh out of the founder. Now, your founder actually came to us, and we have relationships, so they didn't have to give up any equity at all. It was zero equity give up, 0% guarantee, and it was LIBOR plus 650, and they're able to borrow 60 million bucks. But lenders will try on their own to see if they can get some equity out of people when doing these things. So the point is, this is why people use specialists.
So in this particular case, why would a founder want $60 million of debt? And what's the founder allowed to do with that, with the money they take out of the business? Are there restrictions on that?
Zero restrictions, anything you want. In this particular instance, and again, we'll not use the name, they use the majority of those proceeds to buy out the partner, to go from being a 50% owner to becoming 100% owner. And then the residual money's there, they put in their pocket just for family, wealth, and diversity to buy some real estate and that sort of thing.
It's really interesting because we get many people approach us because they're potentially having issues with their partner, and they approach us, will you help us get along better? In some of the cases, well, they're never going to get along better because they've changed one partner wants to go in one direction or doesn't want to work as hard as the other partner anymore. They're tired or older, or just have been at it too long. So this is a great opportunity to potentially buy out a partner in a business, and you help with the capital that enables that to do that.
Yes, exactly. That's the type of situation. The only catch is there's minimum sizing. So these lenders that do this, right, there's very few of them. You can count them on one hand in our country that do it. They have minimum size requirements to get out of bed. And so for these type of financings, they really want to do nothing less than about 30, 35 million bucks to make it worth their time, because they have a lot of work to do.
Okay, so
it could be for 5 million bucks. It has to be an entree, not an appetizer for them.
I get that. So you didn't answer one of the questions that I asked, which was, how painful is this for the founder, and how long does this take? Is like raising that kind of money. Like, I know when I was raising money for my business, my last company years ago, and man, raising money from lenders was really, really hard. So I had to go to friends and family. Well, that's even harder. It takes forever, and the check size is a lot smaller. So if somebody had the minimum EBITDA that you're talking about, reaches out to somebody like you, you're connected. So how long does it take, and how much pain are you going to put us through?
It's a great question. Great question. So 2 months is the answer. The example I gave you for your client, the $60 million financing, that actually took from start to finish 55 days. So it's a ton of work, but they outsource it to a specialist is the point. So I think 2 ways. If a founder were to do this themselves, It probably takes 6, 9 months, something like that is the point. And then again, the lender will get a pound of flesh. But again, we're specialists. You know, Mark, our company, we only do one thing. The only thing we do is execute financings. We've got all these templates, everything set up in relationships we do, but it's generally 60 days door to door. You know, we did a financing for CEO coaching. It took us 40 days. So it's just it's singular focus, only thing we do.
How can you get it done so quickly? And secondly, do you need audited financial statements or all that to get that done?
Yeah, no, you don't need audited financial statements today. So what many lenders are doing is they can get kind of a queue of a quality of earnings report done in lieu of having audited financials. But no, you don't need audit financials, and we get it done quickly. I don't want to do a commercial, but you know, in our business, we've been around for 10 years. We've done $3 billion of financing, Mark. We've never missed. We have 100% close rate. The lender's treating us accordingly. So for example, you know, if they want to continue getting deal flow from us, they have to come through and come through quickly and move smartly. And so it's the same thing for you.
Hey Pete, it sounds a little good to be true that you
Yeah.
got 100% close rate. Like no business has 100% close rate. And let's assume I'm sure because I know you're telling it the way it is. Why is it that you can be that effective? Sounds like you're probably going to be pretty picky on who can explore financing with you if you're batting 1,000.
Yeah, so here's the thing I didn't say. So for like your deal and the deal I talked about before we actually sign up any client, we actually go get the deal in hand. So we get in for example, that example we talked about, if a guy made 10 million bucks, they're worth 100 million bucks, and they wanted to borrow 35, we would actually get some information from them, do a quick little mini underwriting package. I'm a former lender. We would do that ourselves. We know exactly who it goes to. We would go to that person who would do it. We'd actually get them to look at it and say, yeah, I'll do it. We would agree to do it on terms that like what we've done before with them. Once we actually have the lender in hand who will do it and someone we have a long-term relationship with, we then go back to that prospect and go, all right, here's the deal. This is exactly what it's going to look like. It will happen. And so when we start, we already have the winning lender in hand. That's the trick. And so we undertake a little bit of risk, and we just determined it's the best way to run our business over the long term. I'm going to do this for another 20 years more. So we want to make really effective use of our time and everybody's time involved.
What about rates? I know you covered this a moment ago. In the rising rate environment today, our rates have clearly gone up. So what would it look like today if you're able to do this? I would imagine one would go, what am I paying? 15, 16%? Is it like mezz debt or what? Like what would the rate be today?
Sure, let me give you some rule of thumb. So the entire finance market, it's a variable rate market. So everybody probably has heard of LIBOR. LIBOR is now called SOFR. It has a new term, new title, but it's the same thing. And it's a variable rate, and it reprices every 30 days. And for the longest time, LIBOR SOFR was below 1%. Today, SOFR, it's based on SOFR, is at 5.3%. So the way it works is every borrower, and you pay a credit spread above SOFR. Okay. The credit spread, rule of thumb, is generally speaking, call it 1 to 1.5% interest rate for every turn of leverage you have. Okay. So if you had, for example, 3 turns of leverage, you could say that your rate could be, anywhere from 3.5 to 5.5%. And that would be above SOFR. So Mark, that was a lot of math for you, but basically it's cost of funds plus credit spread. Credit spreads are based on how much leverage you have. So if I had in that example, 3.5 turns of leverage for a div loan, that would probably cost you 6.5%. So 6.5% on top of 5.3 gets you to about the high 11s.
So about 12. So to cut through all that nonsense, Pete. So I appreciate the analytics and all that, but about 12%.
About 12% today, and as the cost of funds, treasuries, all that goes back down, those rates will go back down. The credit spread will generally stay within a very tight bandwidth, the same, very close.
So that's not that bad. I remember back in my mortgage company when I was broke and I went to friends and family. I paid 20% to friends and family because I really, really needed the money. in order to survive. This is a different case because in this case, you're saying, hey, you got 10 million EBITDA, so you're not hurting, and you can pull the money out of the business, either to use it for M&A acquisitions, or buy a partner, or what if somebody just wants the money to use it for maybe buying a new home, or just having taken some money out of the business and spreading their risk, and that's doable too.
Absolutely. Real estate, family planning, the whole thing. And you say it sounds easy, but you and I had a conversation before talking about when you used to live in Orange County, did you eat at Mastro's and how did you get your reservation? Mark, there's less than 5 people in the United States of America that do these loans, and you just can't call them up. If I gave you the names of them, if I told you, it's like telling you, here's Mastro's, go get a table. Good luck with that. I mean, you have to know the right people. These relationships are based on volume. These are success-based relationships. You have to call people, and they determine it's in their best interest to be helpful and provide these loans because of other business that they're given.
Hey, Pete, I see another question coming in now. It's why not do this yourself? And and what do you cost to do something like this?
Yeah, you can absolutely go ahead and do it yourself. So in fact, most people that are clients of ours have done it, try to do it themselves before. So everybody should give it a go, and see how that works for them. And how much we cost? We charge anywhere from we work on a success fee basis, anywhere from 3.5 points down to 2 points. And we stopped taking retainers about a half a decade ago just because we always close. So we work on a 100% success basis. We get paid when our clients have success.
Oh, that's really interesting. So you only get paid if you complete the financing.
100% success basis. We don't even take retainers. So we really take on risk here with our clients. And if their deal isn't closed or they don't want to close it, we don't get paid.
And you got a 100% success rate. So I imagine you won't take somebody on unless you believe that it's going to close. Otherwise, you're wasting your own time.
Correct. 10 years now. Yep.
Excellent.
Yep.
Pete, is there anything else you want to add that maybe you could sum up the top 3 or 4 takeaways? When we opened today, we said there were 4 top takeaways. Maybe you could sum those takeaways up for us as we begin to wrap up.
Sure. I think the top takeaway is, look, private equity. So your 2 companies, a founder-owned company and the same company, once they do with a private equity firm, the point is the private equity owned version of that company gets better financing in general because lenders like private equity firms that own middle market companies. Okay. The point is private equity firms outsource their financing to specialists. Founders who do well to do as well. That's number 1. 2, inside information is totally essential here. We're not trading securities, but inside information. I mean, there's hundreds of lenders in the United States. The truth is about 10 of them are really good. You have to know who to go to. So inside information is essential. And then the third one is relationships are based on volume. And this is the example of Mastro's, a restaurant, about getting reservations. The point is you have to figure out who are the right people. And it's just not enough to know who they are. You have to have a relationship with them. I mean, the reality is, I'll give you a fun fact about that too, Mark. We've done $3 billion of financing in 10 years. We've never used a teaser. We've never emailed anybody a summary. Your financing, the other client's financing, we call lenders on a cell phone. We have a 45-minute conversation with them. We know them, they know us, and they say yes. It's the old school way of doing things. And so the point is, for a founder, you learn, well, the guys above you use specialists. Inside information is a big deal, and having the relationships means everything. I think that's the 3 takeaways.
Hey, Pete, you know what you said too is interesting. That private equity firms go through somebody like you or go through you to do these. That's really interesting.
Yeah, they either have someone on staff once they get large, someone like me on staff who does this full time, or they go through folks like us. Because the reason is we're a larger borrower than the private equity firms. Like my company, we'll do 15 plus financings this year. So if you think about it, they kind of like use the restaurant example. I focus on a small group of lenders who we believe are the very, very best lenders in the United States. We have relationships with people who sit on the investment committee, and we're bringing over 15 financings to them every year. And that point is the private equity guys view us as a cooperative, if you would. So if they bring us a financing to do, they're basically grouping their financing with 5 other private equity firms. And it's the same thing that your clients at CEO Coaching get as well. The idea that, how do we get like the financing I talked about for the company made 20 million bucks? He got financed by the very same people we use to do our private equity backed financings. And they do it for us as a courtesy. So
Pete, we're going to put your contact info as we push this out to everybody. So your contact info will go in the chat. You're easy to reach and get back to those that are interested in learning more, want to have a conversation with you.
yep, absolutely.
Okay. Pete, thank you very much for all that you do for our clients and done for us too at CEO Coaching. And you weren't kidding. You really did soup to nuts in 40 days, which is hard to believe that that could even happen in financing. So thank you. And for those that are interested in talking to Pete Canoy from ECS, feel free to reach out to him directly. He does a great job, and we appreciate what you do for our community, Pete. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Great to be with you.
Yeah, great to be with you too. Thanks, Pete.